Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Victoire. I am your host, Emir. Before I begin today's episode, I ask that you kindly subscribe to our channel, like and share our videos. It helps us spread these inspirational stories much further. Today's guest is a WWE Hall of Famer. He's also one half of the most lovable tag teams in professional wrestling history. He certainly also whacked his way into the hearts of many a young fan during the 1990s. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, the Bushwacker, Luke Williams. Victoire. Sponsored by California's own Clark's Nutrition and Natural Foods Market for all your organic produce, healthy foods, and supplement needs. California's own trusted tattoo company and mobile body art bus 760-645-0485. If you're looking to advertise with style, then look no further than one of Southern California's premier advertising magazines, Your Villa Magazine, 951-990-8855. Go ahead, be a rebel, support and advertise in local Southern California news. Valley News, myvalleynews.com, 760-723-7319. Wear casual clothing that makes you feel like $1 million. Or, if you are seeking custom t-shirts, look no further than J Money Clothing, 760-367-8566. Palm Springs, California, Indian Wells, California, Rancho Mirage, California. They're all considered a destination hotspot, a second home haven. With an exquisite record of negotiating the finest deals for clients, Lowell Folsom III and Associates always deliver. Contact Lowell today at 760-391-2504. Thank you for joining us today. I am here with a Hall of Famer, a professional wrestling legend, one half of the Bushwhackers, Mr. Luke Williams. Luke, welcome. And thank you for joining us here on Victoire.
Mate, the name of the show is, I still don't understand what it is, but anyhow, it's great to be on your show, Amar, and I'm looking forward to going back in time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're enjoying it too. And just so you know, Luke, so people ask me that all the time, Victoire means victory in French. So it's, sharing you guys' victories and your success stories in hopes that that will inspire, motivate, and encourage our viewers. So
Okay,
that's it in a nutshell.
let's rip open.
All right. Okay. Wonderful, Luke. Okay. So your career began in New Zealand. You were born in New Zealand. And I wanted to share with our audience members a little bit about your life then. So tell us, what was life like for you growing up in New Zealand? What were your interests? Were you into pro wrestling, your family life, brothers and sisters, all that good stuff? Take us back in time now, Luke.
Yeah, well, mate, I never even heard of pro wrestling. We didn't have television until 1968, mate. And the TV would start at 3 in the afternoon and go off air at 8 o'clock. And so I started in 62. The only way to promote wrestling was on the radio or posters. Okay. And my family life, I'm the only kid in the family, and I played rugby. My school life was rugby. I was taught by nuns, and then brothers, and then by priests. I was, in the Catholic school, and I played rugby and that, and then when I finished, the funny part is, at a school holidays, I went to work at a friend's, father's factory called Steel Web. And when it was time to go back to school, I told my parents I'm not going back to school, and they didn't like that. At that time, I was in a class of 60 people, and I was around fourth in the class in with mathematics, English, and all the rest of the stuff. And they really didn't like it when I said I'm not going back to school. They didn't like it at all. And I stayed at the factory with a steel wave and that, and took an apprenticeship as a sort of a fitter and turner, steel worker, fitter and turner.
Okay.
And I was 15 at the time.
Right, very young. Yeah, very young. So were you still living at home, or did you move out at that time, Luke?
I was. It got pretty rough at home because they wanted me to stay at school. I think I moved out. I moved out of home, and of course, being the only kid, that really upset my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine.
Anyhow, going back to when I was living with my parents, right? I'm living with my parents, and I'm 15 years old. Next door neighbor was 18, about 18. His name was Brian Ashley.
Okay.
And he was a bodybuilder.
All right.
And he went in Mr. New Zealand, 18 or 19 years. And he went into Mr. New Zealand, and he was placed in Mr. New Zealand. And the judge was a former Mr. New Zealand, 1950, and he said to my neighbor, "You want to make some money with that body?" Mm-hmm. And my neighbor said, "How?" And he said, the judge said, "Come to this gym. We're open, I'm there from Monday to Friday, from such and such a time, such and such a time. Come in and I'll show you how." So my neighbor started going in. It was about 6 or 8 miles away. The gym was known well in New Zealand. It was called Coolman's Gym. And, you've heard of the Commonwealth Games?
Yep.
The British Empire Games?
Yep.
Well, all the amateurs were in in those sort of games when they were out down under in that, Australia and New Zealand, and that they would come to that gym like the boxers and the wrestlers. Now we're talking about amateurs. Yeah. But it was a notorious gym. It was like the gym in the first Rocky movie. Dumbbells, kettlebells lying around the floor, no racks or anything. Two machines or 2 racks, a squat rack and a bench press rack.
Okay.
That was all. And there was 2 rings there. They were about a foot off the floor. They were boxing rings. 4 ropes, and the floor in them was like the floor you're standing on now.
Yeah.
Hard as rock. Yeah. And anyhow, my neighbor started going in there, and now I'd never heard of professional wrestling till he came back home and told me it was professional wrestling.
Yeah.
We didn't have television, and I'd never seen it, never heard of it. So he started going there for about 6 months, and then he used to say, "Come with me, come and have a look." So 6 months down the line, I went with him to that gym, and I was 170, 175 wet.
Okay.
170, I'd say. And that I'm talking about pounds. And I come to the gym there, and I started doing a few weights in there, and tried to get, to put some size on, and get away from that skinny look. Yeah. And I started buying caffeine, that's a protein and that, and trying to put weight on, which didn't come. Anyhow, I started working out on the mat with the light heavyweights, or you call them junior heavyweights over here, but they were light heavyweights in New Zealand. they were sort of semi-pro.
Okay.
They all had cauliflower ears, and they were you know, they're pretty beat up because most of them were from amateur backgrounds.
Okay.
And I started pushing around with them and that, blah, blah, blah. And anyhow, we were living in the capital city. Anyhow, along comes the first professional match I went with my neighbor to. He was in a tag match. He was around 230, 235, 230. And I went to the show in Wellington Town Hall, and the building was packed out because they only had wrestling maybe 4 times a year in that town hall. Oh, wow. 4 or 5 times. Okay. And it was a local show. I never even heard of pro wrestling till then. Yeah. So I went and watched it for the first time. Anyhow, about 2 months later, my neighbor said, I got a booking 100 miles away. You want to come and keep me company? And I said, yeah. I went to the show with him. Okay. Now, I've been on the mat for about 8 months in the gym, you know, just rolling around with these guys, junior heavyweights.
Yeah.
Or light heavyweights. Now, I forgot to tell you, in the wrestling shows, there was only 3 pro wrestling. There was amateur wrestling to intermission, and then there'd be 3 matches.
Okay.
There'd be a junior heavyweight, there'd be a tag team match, and then there'd be the main event. And these were rounds.
Okay.
Junior heavyweight or light heavyweight was 6 5-minute rounds. Okay. And the main events were 8 6-minute rounds, or 8 5.
Okay.
8 6-minute rounds. You know what I mean? 8 6 to 48. Yeah. 8 6-minute rounds. Now, if you did 4 rounds or 5 rounds, the people wouldn't come back. They wanted their money's worth.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you had to go the distance. Anyhow, I go to the first show. The second show, I was 100 miles away from home, and that was sitting in the dressing room while the amateur matches were going, and then it was getting their time for intermission, and the guy in the light heavyweight match to face the other guy didn't arrive.
All right.
They asked me what size shoe I wore, and I told them. Next minute, a pair of boots come flying over, and a tank top come flying over, and I had a pair of jeans on. Yeah. Next minute, I got the boots on, I got my jeans on, I got a tank top on. Yeah. Intermission goes, I'm fucking thrown in the ring. Now, don't ask me what happened or anything.
Yeah.
But my name was Ted Williams.
Okay.
And I had long light brownish hair. Next minute, I'm gorgeous Teddy Williams.
Oh wow!
And if I could show you on my camera, on my phone, I'll show you. But we're using my camera to this show. Yeah. So yeah. Next minute, I'm on the ring. And I had the match. I come out, and they all put me over.
Yes.
I don't know why, but I guess I got whatever kind of job I did, I got it done, and it was over into the next matches.
Yeah.
Hence the start of Gorgeous Teddy Williams.
Gorgeous Teddy Williams. Wow. So how long did you run with that character?
Well, we'll go on with that. So I started working shows, every show they had. Now and again, an overseas guy would come. And they're mainly from Canada or UK or Europe. Okay. Because we were being a British country. And of course, Canada was too, under the Queen.
Yep.
At the time, Queen. So, when an overseas guy came out, we would run maybe run while he's in the country, right? We might run 1 week, next week, and the next week, and then he would go back home again. He'd be there for a month, and he'd work about 2 towns a week or 3 towns a week, and then go home. So that's how much work I got. And where I worked, I was right near an airport.
Oh, perfect. Very convenient.
And I started work at 7 in the morning and finished at 4. And you could fly anywhere in the country within an hour.
Excellent.
New Zealand is only two islands, 600 miles long by 150 miles wide. And down the end of the country, the last 100 miles, that was there was no big towns there. So both islands, it was like that. So, the range where you worked in that island was around 450 miles, from one end to the other end.
Okay.
So I was working like that. Now, 1965, a promoter from the States came out to Australia, bought out the roller derby, which had only been going a year in Australia. Now there's only, in New Zealand, there was only one channel at that. When in 88, there was only one channel. Anyhow, we're not there yet. We're 68, I mean. 65, there was 3 channels in Australia. Australia's landmass is the same as North America, but there was only 30 million people in Australia compared to 30 million over here at that time.
Yeah.
So he come over. Now the name of the promoter you would have heard of, Jim Barnett.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He worked for Vince. He worked for Vince Senior, Vince Junior. He worked for Jim Crockett Senior, Jim Crockett Junior. He back then in the 60s, early before he came to Australia, he was the only promoter running nationwide. He owned territories. He owned part of territories, like 50% of territories, about 5 territories in the country.
Okay.
Chicago, and then, across the country, Florida. He owned half of Florida, half of this, half of that.
Yeah.
I heard he got a bit of strife over here, so he come down there, put out the roller derby, put that world championship wrestling on, WCW. He owned that name.
Oh, he did. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, Jim Barnett. And Jim Barnett was a good friend of Ted Turner, who owns TBS, well, it was WTBS then, and CNN and all that.
Yeah.
You've heard of Ted Turner, of course, right?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me, Luke?
Yeah, you heard of Ted Turner.
Yes, I've heard of Ted Turner. Yeah, he
owned WCW all 90, 89 to 2000.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so, and he owned WCW.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he bought it all to his mate, Jim Barnett.
Okay.
Jim Barnett, when he came back to the States, he lived in Turner Tower in Atlanta, and he's the one that got Ted Turner to put wrestling on the satellite and on WTBS, or TBS now, in 75.
Okay.
Anyhow, we're going back to 65.
Yeah.
He opened up WCW, an all-American show, American announcers and all-American talent. He was using Aussie talent to get Americans over, except 2 or 3 Aussies. He kept his baby faces there. They were big names there.
Yeah.
And they worked over here later on. Anyhow, so he opened up there at 65, and I started going over there to work for him in '66.
Okay.
And he changed my name from Gorgeous Teddy Williams to Sweet Williams.
Okay. And that was in the
Sweet
States.
Williams.
So he brought you out to the States as Sweet Williams.
No, to Australia.
Okay. To Australia. Okay.
So I was going to Australia to work for him. You know, I was making about $40 a week in New Zealand, you know, or 30 as an apprentice, and I was making £2.10 as a wrestler. That was around $5 a match.
Yeah. Okay.
At that time in New Zealand, and he was bringing me over to Australia and paying me $250 a week.
Wow, a big jump.
So that was, you know, that was big money.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, big money, $250, and he was taking the guy that trained me over there too, and then come late '60s, he was bringing Tony Garea over there. Tony Garea, who worked for Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
In the end. Remember, he was a tag player in the '70s. He was a tag team in New York with Dean Ho, with a lot of different people for WWF.
Yeah.
And then he became an agent later on.
Okay.
Anyhow, I'm working for Jim Barnett as Sweet William. And then a guy came back to New Zealand from UK, and he was in the Empire Games. He won a medal in heavyweight wrestling. He came back in '66, '65, and he opened up wrestling full time in New Zealand. Okay. So from '65 onwards, we were doing 6 or 7 shows a week in New Zealand. Some towns only held 300 people, other ones held 2,000 or 1,000.
Yeah.
Still. And don't forget, we didn't have TV.
Yeah, it's a lot of people to put in there.
Now, Bob is Butch Miller. He started working for an independent guy who had trained himself, and he was training guys, and Bob started with him.
All right.
After rugby, and that because he trained at the YMCA, and this other guy trained at the YMCA. Mm. But our promoter who came back from England, John De Silva, he saw Bob at the gym one day and told him to come to our gym. Hence, Bob came to our gym and started working for our guys.
Yeah.
At 65. And so then 66, I actually wrestled him when he come over. You know, when he come over, he was around 230. He was around 225, I guess.
Wow, he's pretty big.
And I was around 180. And I wrestled. I still remember wrestling him. Boy, he was stiff.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get his back arm into a hammerlock.
Yeah.
Remember the old hammerlock?
Yep.
The police used? And I couldn't even get his arm into that. That's how stiff he was.
Gosh, yeah, he was pretty strong.
He didn't know the business properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyhow, the next year that he was working now every day of the week, and he soon looms fast. He looms like fucking extra fast.
Yeah.
And the following year, on his shows now, working around New Zealand, he would have all professionals, and right before intermission, he would have me working a single.
Yeah,
I was a heel, and then Bob was a heel. He would work in a single. Then after intermission, we'd come back in a tag. The two guys would work with him and me, Bob. They would be a tag team, and Bob and me would be a tag team.
Okay.
And we'd have that match. And then there'd be the main event after.
Yeah, we used.
So there'd be 4 or 5 matches on the card. 2 matches before maybe 1 match. 2 matches before me and Bob, and then I'd be in a match. I'd be the 3rd match.
Yeah.
Bob would be the 4th match. Maybe 1 match before us.
Yeah.
So I'd be the second match. Bob would be the third match. There'd be an intermission. We'd come back in a tag, and then it'd be the main event.
Were
Now
you
these were rounds.
were you still Sweet Williams at this time?
Yeah, I'm still Sweet William.
Okay. And
I'm still Sweet William.
and also,
And we started going to Singapore, Penang, Kuala Lumpur. We did we would fly over and that, and then into Jakarta, which is a little island above Australia, which links to Singapore, and then drive up. Those days, it was tournaments. You do an 8-day tournament in Singapore,
okay.
in the same building for 6 days.
Okay.
Then you'd go up to Kuala Lumpur and you do a 3-day tournament. Okay. You know, each night you come back,
yeah.
and then the winner would be, and that will be over. Mm-hmm. We'd do, and then at that time, it was not Malaysia, it was Malaya and Asia.
Okay. How did you enjoy working in those countries? What was the culture like for you? Was it culture?
Well, it was different. Yeah. Now, when it was Malaya and Asia, you know, there was a difference between them, and then in '68 the war started there to get in for independence, yeah. And they were fighting against each other, and we would drive up. There was a 5 o'clock curfew, and we would drive up in the curfew time after 5 o'clock, and would hear da 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 machine guns in the jungle. Now on the side of the road, where there's all sugar cane and rubber trees, and the elephants, the Asian elephants, the smaller elephants, they'd be working, rolling up the cane, and there's the bullocks plowing the ground. You know, 2 bullocks pulling a guy on a board, and that with horns underneath digging up the ground.
Yeah.
There was no machinery those days, mate.
Yeah.
There was trucks. The elephants were stuck with they stacked the stuff on the back of trucks, and or wagons, and that's how the track was transported. That the animals worked the ground and worked everything. You know, animals worked all the, and that in those days too, the woman in the third world, they would walk around with just a loincloth on, and they'd carry the stuff on their heads like you see in movies.
Yeah, totally different era, totally different time.
Yeah, their chest was open, you know. Their 2 water wings were out there in the open. Yeah, so that's how it was, mate. And Butch and me would drive up with the driver. We'd be high on Thai stick. You heard of Thai stick?
No, what is that?
Thai stick, you never. That strong marijuana tea. The buds, they pull the buds. These were red buds. They pull off the plants and stick them on a bamboo stick, and they'd pack them. They were exported all over the world from Thailand.
Was that very popular?
They were called Thai stick. It was top grade THC in the buds.
Okay.
Buds that you take 1 or 2 puffs and you semi-hallucinate.
Were you using that was that just recreational, or did you guys use that for pain, for body pain, or what have you?
Like, we were young and full of piss and vinegar, mate. We were using it for recreation and to pass time. So we'd drive up through the jungle, because we drove up the day before.
Yeah.
I never worked on the stuff, but we drove up the day before, you know, when we went up to Malaya and Asia. And it wasn't until after the 70s that it became Malaysia. It was still Asia and Malaya, you know, because the war was on for independence.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the right side, on the eastern side, driving up, that was fucking, the other war was going on.
War zone.
You know, Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was deeper into the jungle, but that was Vietnam War was going on.
Yeah.
And all those, and in the 60s, all those Americans who were fighting over there were coming down to Australia for R&R, rest and recreation. So King's Cross, Sydney, the suburb of Sydney, which used to open at 8 o'clock in the morning before, now it was open. That was the red light district and everything. There's drugs, hookers, everything. That was open 24/7 now.
Yeah.
The price of everything. Your breakfast used to pick up for 99, steak and eggs, $1, 99 cents. Now everything was $2.99. Everything. As soon as those guys come down, they were coming down with $1,000 in their pocket to spend in a week.
Yeah.
Where the average guy made $60.
Gosh. Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All these R&R kids, and they were from 18 years and up.
Yeah. Gosh.
King's Cross, if you look back at it, that became live. That was wild.
Yeah. Gosh. So that was that.
The hotel I was staying in was owned by American in the King's Cross. It was the Texas Tavern, and that all the boys stayed there, all the American boys. Yeah. And you can look out the window and see the hookers, the all-night hookers used to go in at about 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and then the fresh ones would come out at 8 o'clock. You see them change shifts.
Gosh, wow.
Wherever they were on the street.
Yeah.
That's how it was. You go for breakfast in the bar, and there'll be music playing. They have a band playing for breakfast, a laid-back band.
Yeah.
But it was music. Everything opened up 24/7.
Wow. And this was in the 70s, you said, right? Early 70s?
This was in the 60s.
60s, sorry.
When the Vietnam War started in 65.
Yeah, okay.
64, 65. All those kids were coming down there. And that's when King's Cross, the suburb of Sydney, Australia, opened up 24/7.
Yeah. So
and the bottom of King's Cross was Bondi Beach, and that was a new beach at that time.
Wow. So you got all that going
on.
So
it was wild. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyhow, I started working. I was working over there, and I first went to Japan late 60s.
Okay.
Late 60s. Actually, Bob went to Inoki's first tour. Tony Inoki's first tour in Japan was 1970.
All right. So
at that time, I was living in Singapore for a 3-month stint, and Bob did 6 weeks in Tokyo, in Japan.
Yeah.
And then he came to Singapore, and we worked there.
How did you enjoy?
His name was the Brute then, and we were Sweet William and the Brute.
Okay. How did you enjoy living in Singapore?
Huh?
Did you enjoy living in Singapore?
Yeah, it was easy. You only worked, so many nights a week, and that tournament would go on maybe 5 nights or 4 nights. You were at home every night. Okay. You know what I mean? Leaving at 5 o'clock to go to the building.
Okay, it's not too bad.
And then you'd be back at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Boogie Street was open 24/7. That was the main street in Singapore, which was open.
Yeah.
And during the day, it was a marketplace where people were, driving and, up and down, and there was a market. Every meat was sold, everything at night. That street was all closed down, and you couldn't drive through it, and it was tables, and the tourists would sit at tables up the street, and guys would own tables, tables, and they would come with all the menus from all the restaurants and ask you what you wanted, and then they'd run to those restaurants and order your food and your booze. They didn't even own, and they were that's how they made their money.
Yeah.
They would add their price onto, and then they'd have a big book with them with all the shows what were on, behind the scenes shows, big shows, and all that, and photos of all the girls and the lady boys. Yeah. They had a book full of all that.
Okay.
And they would show you, and then if you wanted someone, you'd point to that person, they'd hook you up, and they'd show you to get you to a show if you wanted to. They were hustlers.
Okay, got it.
Proper hustlers.
Okay. And what was the earning for you like out there? Were you guys making good money at that time?
$250.
Still $250? Okay.
Yeah, 70, $250, mate.
Okay.
I think.
$250.
Yeah, we were still pounds, shillings, and pence
in
New Zealand. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me. We were still pounds, shillings, and pence. We hadn't changed to a dollar. I don't think we changed to a dollar yet, mate.
Okay, got it. But you guys were a tag team.
Yeah, we hadn't changed the decimal system. We hadn't changed to that.
Yeah, not yet. So
yeah, anyhow, we were doing that and working. We got to Singapore. One time I did, maybe a 2-month stretch until a 3 months, but then we just got the tours for 3 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Suppose went up a few times, and then so now I've done Australia, Singapore, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Penang. That's where Muhammad Ali had one of the big fights. There's a thriller in Manila, and then there was the other one in Penang or Kuala Lumpur. I think it was Kuala Lumpur. Muhammad Ali had a big show there. Wow. In the ballpark.
Yeah.
Anyhow, we're doing that, and then and then 1972. 69. Andre the Giant. Well, Gene Ferrari came to New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
I'll shoot you these photos after.
Yeah.
So you can insert them in the show.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Gene Ferrari came to New Zealand. He's 7 foot. They advertise him as 7'4". He's 7 foot and 350 pounds. Okay. He looks skinny.
All right.
Skinny. And I got a photo of him in that when he was. People have sent me all these photos. I didn't have them, but I've been sent them. Anyhow, he sent me a photo and he came to New Zealand, 69, and Butch and me did handicap matches all around the country, maybe for 2 months with him.
Gosh, that's a good time with Andre. Yeah. Wow.
We used to have English wrestlers come out, you know what I mean, from England and UK and European wrestlers.
Yeah. At this time, Luke, was Andre part of the WWF, or was he part of another group?
No, he hadn't never. There was no thoughts of him going to North America yet.
Okay.
He was a kid, mate.
Okay. Wow.
Look up his age in 1968, 69.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he would have been very young. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe 20, 18, 20.
Just starting
20.
out. Wow. What was it like? What was it like working with him back then?
Hang on a minute. Let me work out what he was.
Okay.
Yeah, he's around 20, 21.
Okay. Was he?
Anyhow, we worked tag matches in the big cities, Auckland and Wellington and Christchurch, him and the promoter, and then the other cities, we just worked handicap matches. And what we did rounds, and that what we did, the people come unglued.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were we had different spots that would really pop the people. They'd be all standing. You do it today, the people would go.
It's
you
true.
know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, that's how it was back then. And anyhow, so he went back home or back to France and Europe, working England and Europe, and then he went to a company called Grand Prix in Montreal, being a Frenchman. He went there in 1971.
Okay.
Now this company was owned by Morris and Butcher, Morris and Paul Vachon. Paul just died last year.
Yeah.
And you know, Mad Dog Vachon died quite a few years ago. Anyhow, you heard of the Vachons?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and the other guy was Edward Carpentier, the Flying Frenchman. He was the main eventer in Madison Square Gardens in the 50s, late 50s, working against Killer Kowalski and all that.
Yeah.
They owned the territory. And when Andre came over there in 71, they were only running one town a night. You know, the company and the Rougeos were the opposition.
Oh, yeah.
They ran Quebec and Ontario. You know, their provinces.
Yeah.
Their states. What we call over here states, their provinces in Canada.
Yeah.
Anyhow, they're running the two of them. And that. Now, 1972, 9 months later, 2 years, Butch and me decided, to go over there. Okay. The promoter in New Zealand knows. He'd been over there and worked for them, so he knows Paul and Morris. Okay. And they book us, Paul and Morris book us, and we go over there in 72. And when we get there, mate, to Grand Prix, they were running 3 towns a night. That's how big it became with Andre being there.
Wow.
How about that? And there was only 3 television stations in the area at that time. And Andre was on the 3 of them. 2 of them had wrestling shows on, and the 3rd one, there was talk shows on. And he was on talk shows on the French stations. He was on talk shows all the time. Gosh. He was a superstar. What I mean by superstar, a superstar. Yeah. Nobody had seen anyone like him.
Okay.
The nearest guy to him was from Vancouver, was Don Leo Jonathan.
Okay.
You heard of him?
No, I haven't heard of him.
6'8", 350, 360 pounds. Andre was in the 400s now. Okay. You know, in the 400s. Don Leo maybe 375. Don Leo could do kip-ups. You know what they are? You lay on your back and you do handspring. You land on your feet.
Yeah.
And Andre could do drop kicks.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm going to get to that in a minute. Yeah. So when we came over to Canada in 72, they were running 3 shows a night. And we arrived to Sweet William and the Brute, but the Brute had already been in Canada. The Brute from Brute Barnard and Skull Murphy, they were down in Australia in the 60s and Brute Barnard was from Charlotte. He was a Frenchman who was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and of course he'd been up there a lot. And that's when they changed Butch's name to Paul Vachon. Looked around his office and he saw a book on the shelf, and the main character was Nick Carter. So all of a sudden, Butch's name is Nick Carter, Crazy Nick Carter.
Totally.
So here we are now, Nick Carter and Sweet William. and I've got Nick Carter on. He's got a dog collar around his neck and a chain.
Yeah.
That's what I was using in Singapore, going up there too. I'd lead Butch around on a collar and chain.
All right.
And then when he'd get in the ring, I'd undo the collar and he'd wrestle with a collar around his neck. I was more or less to calm him down and to and let him go and he'd go crazy.
It reminds me, Luke, have you ever seen that film Body Slam that came out in the 80s?
I can't remember, mate.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a
Tell me why. Tell me what it remembers you. What part reminds you of that?
Okay, so the Barbarian was in that film, and he was wearing a neck collar, and the character who was wrestling with him in that film would take him, with the collar, he'd bring him to the ring. So that's what reminded me of that. I think it came out in the 80s.
Yeah, well, we were doing this in the 60s, mate.
Wow, there you go.
We were doing Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Makes sense.
And we tried to get in the States too, but there was an F up there. I'll tell you about that later.
Okay.
So we're working for this company now. Grand Prix running 3 towns a night, mate, and all the top Americans in that was the biggest company in North America. In the 69, 70 to about 73, that was the hottest company in America. All the hockey rinks were sold out. The places were packed. Madison Square Garden was doing full houses, but that was only one show. These were every show around Quebec and Ontario was sold out. And of course, too, Maple Leaf Gardens. You've heard of that, right?
Which one? Sorry, Luke?
You heard of Maple Leaf Gardens?
Yes, Maple Leaf Gardens. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Jack Tunney. That was sold out too, mate.
Okay. Wow.
So everywhere was sold out, and it was hot. It was a hot place. So all the talent from the States was up there. We had Billy White Wolf. We had 3 Indians who were well known. Billy Two Rivers, War Eagle. These were top Indians around USA. We had Tarzan Tyler. Everyone. The Hollywood Blondes. Dale Roberts, who was in the Freebirds, and Jerry Brown. They were the Hollywood Blondes. They were and their manager was Sir Humperdinck, who was Florida, and he went to WWE, WWF. Everybody who had a name was up there. Yeah. You know what I mean? Working there. And we were lucky. The top baby face, of course, was the Vachons, who brought us in, and Andre the Giant and Edward Carpentier. Okay. And the top heel was Killer Kowalski. You heard of him, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, Killer Kowalski.
Yeah, Killer was selling out Madison Square Garden. Pardon me, from the late 50s right through to the late 70s. So, and we met him in Australia. He helped us in Australia when we were going over there. He'd make sure we got taken care of in Australia. He took care of. And when we come to Canada, we traveled with him in his car. He took us he led us by our hands and took us. So, and every night we were either working against the Vachons, Edward Carpentier and the Giants, or the Italians, Dino Brito and Dino Bravo. Dino was 19 years old then, about 210 pounds, muscled up kid.
Yeah, he was huge.
Yeah, and they were the top Italian team. They were one of the top teams, and it was a top Indian team. So all the time we were in Grand Prix, which is nearly 2 years, year and a half, we were only working with 4 different groups. The Vachons, Edward and the Giants, the Italians, and 2 Indians. We worked with them all that time, like little programs with them.
Yeah.
So we were one of the tag teams and one of the top tag teams in one of those towns.
Were you relocated at that point to Canada, or were you going back and forth?
Yeah, no. 25 hours flight, 30 hours flying. We were living over in Canada.
Okay.
When we left in 72, we never came back to New Zealand until they got television there in 76.
Okay.
They got television, the actual television in late 68, 69.
Yeah.
But there was only one station. And then we came back, the promoter rang us up and asked us to come back because he said we got television, a wrestling show. And that's when we came back to do the wrestling show for him, which was a big mistake.
Why was that?
Anyhow, but I'll get to that anyhow. So we're working over there. And then after about a year and a half to 2 years, the promoter said, we'll have to start you. We were getting utilized good, you know what I mean? We were working with them under the main event. He said, now we've got to, either if you want to stay, we have to put you down in the card a bit. You're going to have to start advertising shows on your feet. I mean, in other words, doing jobs. He says, otherwise I can book you out. I'd rather book you out and bring you back. There's a company in Calgary called Stampede.
Yep.
And he said, it's a good company and I can book you there. Now, who the hell? We looked at each other. Who was Stampede? Who the hell was that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We didn't know it was owned by a notorious guy called Stu Hart, and the company had every wrestler in the United States had been through Calgary. All of the names had been through there.
Yeah.
I'm talking about American wrestlers, not Canadian. A lot of Canadians, of course, but all the American wrestlers had gone up there because that was one of the main companies in the early days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s. So we moved over there. We flew in on a Thursday. Friday night they had the fairgrounds. They had 2 arenas at the fairgrounds. They had the corral, which held 8 to 10 or 12,000. Now that's a saddle dome. Then they had the smaller one. I forget what it was called, but that's where they sold the cattle and the horses. That held 3,500, right. 4,000. Now Friday night we did the small one every Friday night, and they shot television there, and that would be shown Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. Now back in those days there was no cable. Calgary would see it, we'd shoot that in Calgary every Friday night, and that would be shown Saturday morning in Calgary. And the rest of the territory would be a week later because it was bicycled around. There was no cable.
Right.
You understand what I'm talking about?
So you're taking tapes to the other places so they can play it at the station?
Yeah, they would send the other 6 towns would get a tape sent to them on Monday morning.
Yeah.
And that would show in the other towns on Saturday. So those towns you'd run a week later.
Okay.
You'd be coming off that with angles a week later. You understand?
Yeah, I understand that. So there's a delay. So you're working.
Now that was the delay. Now that was like that right up to 76 till cable came out. You know what I mean?
Gosh, that must have been difficult then to do that.
Oh no, that was everywhere, mate.
Yeah. So
you're a week behind. I was like that in a lot of towns that I worked in.
Okay.
For years.
Okay.
Right up to the 80s in some places.
Yeah. So they had to
Past the 80s.
So they had to basically watch the storyline because obviously when it came out on TV, you guys had to kind of catch up with it. sort of thing, constantly playing
Yeah,
catch.
yeah. Well, you'd hold back the angles you did on television. You do it in the town where it's taped on Saturday night. You come off the angle, but you'd be a week later coming off the angle in the other towns.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how it was.
Okay.
And that it was easy for us at the time because you were used to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You were used to it anyhow. So we landed in Calgary. The building is the pavilion. Pavilion. That's where they sold the animals.
Okay.
So we did the pavilion on Friday night. So we arrived at the pavilion. And that Archie Goldie, the Mongolian stopper, is the booker.
All right.
He's from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
You heard of the stopper?
I think I've heard of the Stumper, but I can't put an image to the name. But I've heard it in passing.
He was working for Jim Cornette, and when Jim Cornette had his territory in the 90s, he was finishing up then. But
Okay.
the Stomper was a big name around the country. 260, muscle, not a bodybuilding muscle, but muscled up, no belly, and he was a machine as a worker,
Okay.
non-stop worker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A great heel, a great heel. He was one of the Mongols earlier on.
Oh yeah, I remember the Mongols. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyhow, so we worked our first night in there. We're working against the champions. Can't remember their names, but Stampede's world champions.
Okay.
And we're getting DQ'd. First night in there. So we have the match. At the end of the match, I think we pull out a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
We knock him down, a dog chain.
Okay.
Knock one down, gets juice. Knocks the other one, gets juice. We're putting the boot to them. Next minute, an 11-year-old kid gets thrown in the ring.
Hmm.
A minute later, another kid, maybe 13. I mean, they're 10. Between me, they're 10 and 13 gets thrown in the kid. And the guy outside yelling out, "Put the boot to them, champ, put the boot to them." So we put the boot to them. Now we've got 2 guys bleeding on the mat and 2 kids not bleeding.
Yeah.
Next minute, a kid comes in bleeding. Put the boot to them. And he's yelling out in a high-pitched voice, "Put the boot to them, champ, put the boot to them, champ." That's how he sounds.
Yeah.
Next minute, the 4th guy comes in, bleeding. Now we've got 4 guys. We've got 6 guys. 4 guys bleeding and 2 guys. Next minute, dressing room comes out, or referees, and the dressing room comes out. So we get out of Dodge and head back to the dressing room. Now we all come out of the same entrance, but on the entrance, the hallway, there's dressing rooms on one side and dressing rooms on the other side. The hallway. At the mouth of the hallway, when we're going back in, there's this guy, 5'10", about 270, 280 pounds there. Thicker in the hips, wide across the shoulders, but thicker in the hips, and that standing there. And he said, "What the fuck's what the fuck's going on? They're my kids out there. What the fuck are you doing?" And we say, what's the name said to put the boot to them. Now, we didn't know beforehand, but we've been told about Stu Hart, how he sounds and what he looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was Stu Hart telling us that we were beating up his kids.
So that was Brett?
Brett was one of them. Brett was only 13 then.
Oh, wow.
we came back in 2019 and Brett, this was 73. Now when we came back 6 years later, Brett was 19.
Hmm.
And that he started when he was 18, late 18. Anyhow, the guy throwing the kids out was Abdullah the Butcher.
Oh, wow. Another legend.
And he was carving the kids and throwing them in the ring. Telling us to get the book, which he was doing. We knew Abby from Montreal. He was working for the Rougeos while we were working for the Vachons.
Okay.
He was working opposition. And so we'd met him and he'd been in New Zealand too in the I think it was early 70s. I don't know. Anyway, we knew Abby. And they were bringing us in to be the top tag team, and he was helping us get over fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, little did we know that Stu ran 2 shows twice a year in the fairgrounds back to back. On a Friday night, he'd run the pavilion, and a Sunday in the same fairgrounds, he'd run the corral. And that weekend, we hadn't had a running sheet yet where we were going. And that weekend, we were working the corral on Sunday. So Saturday night, we got picked up and taken to Edmonton. And the people in Edmonton hadn't seen us yet because the television was a week behind.
Yeah.
We worked in Edmonton on Saturday night. Against the champs.
At this time, Luke, were you, because I remember you were the Kiwis at one point, the sheep herders. Had you been billed?
No, we're still the Kiwis.
Okay.
We're the New Zealand Kiwis.
Okay.
Nick Carter and Sweet William.
Okay.
We'd dropped the chain. We'd dropped the chain and the collar. Okay. And he was still Nick Carter. So we worked Edmonton Saturday, Sunday. We came back and we worked in the arena against the champions for the belt. The main event was Abby against another fly-in, but who had been in the territory before, was a big name there. And I think Dory Funk was on the card on the Sunday. It was a big card. Anyhow, we were the semi-final or one of the tag team main event. You know, there was Abdullah and someone and Dory, whatever after us, or we were in between them. Anyhow, when we came out in the big show in that arena, you know, the arena, I didn't know, 8 or 9 to 12,000, the corral. Yeah. That the people booed and threw stuff at us, but it wasn't. We had heat, but not drawing heat. You know, you put us on the card on top. You know, we couldn't draw a full house. You know what I mean? But we had heat with the people. We saw the television, and they were throwing stuff at us on Friday night because everybody knew the Hart Kids. The Hart Kids sold the programs in the corral every Friday night, and they were on television walking around selling programs. Okay. They're 8, 9 to 12, 13. So all the fans knew them. Mm-hmm. So that was our start with Stu Hart. We won the belt that night. The third day in the territory, we won the belt. About 6 months later, Archie Goldie left to go to another territory. Hence, they had no single main heel. We were the main event now with the top baby faces.
Right. How long did that last?
So that was,
How long did that last when you were at the top there?
We were there to maybe end of 63, 64 to 65.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
That's when the end of 65, I think, yeah, the end of 63, that's when we had a manager then in Calgary, and then he helped fucked us with another guy, and we dropped the belts to them, and we left the territory, and we came back to New Zealand to do on the show was On the Mat with Ernie Leonard. That was the show in New Zealand.
Oh, like a
Now while we're
TV show?
TV show. That's why the New Zealand promoter called us back, because he was getting the first television show of wrestling in New Zealand. Now while we were in Canada, you know, being a British country, we had a lot of paper write-ups in New Zealand since we'd been away. You know what I mean? How we were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're putting us over in the New Zealand paper. He brought us back as villains, promoter. Why? Because Australia now, Jim Barnett had moved back to the States. In 1973, Jim Barnett closed down Australia, or sold it, not closed down, sold it to Australia. He had to get out due to tax reasons out of Australia. And he went to New Zealand, and he brought his crew, Mark Lewin and King Curtis, and all those guys to New Zealand. And Mark Lewin and Rick Martel, and Don Morocco, they were the main baby faces in Australia in 1969, 70, 71, 72. So he brought them to New Zealand. And Mark was a baby face. Of course, King and Abdullah and all that were heels in New Zealand, you know, wrestling around the country. And they were doing good, but now they're getting television.
Okay.
And when Jim Barnett went to Australia, Mark Lewin was the booker for him in Australia. Now Mark Lewin was the booker in New Zealand. And, you know, Jim Barnett come back to the States, and Mark and King had 48% of the business in New Zealand, and the Steve Rickon had 52%. He'd given them 48%. You know, and they were residents in New Zealand. You know, King had bought a house down there. King's wife was an Aussie.
Okay.
Australian. And that from him working in Australia. And Mark Lewin had been a booker in Australia for 6 years. And King was his best mate. So he'd been there as a heel, the main heel there for 6 years. You know what I mean? Yeah. Apart from Kowalski. I don't know whether you've ever seen King Curtis's interviews and his work.
No, I've never seen King Curtis's stuff. I'll have to check.
The best interview, the best, and that face of his in his interviews, unreal stories he could tell.
Yeah,
he was as high as a kite. And the story, he was 350, 360 pounds, and he could tell. And it finished with a big splash off the top rope. Now he was coming off the second rope with a splash. His knees were bad.
Okay.
Anyhow, he was a heel. And we came back to New Zealand, and of course, the referee, the promoter was a baby face. Mark Lewin was a baby face. Don Morocco was a baby face. Rick Martel was a baby face. And they'd done a story where Rick Martel was the illegitimate son of Mark Lewin, and the people bought it.
Yeah.
And now they got television. Well, we haven't done it yet. We came in for the first 13 shows, the first season. And we do 2 seasons, fly in, and we do 2 seasons, and we stay there.
Okay.
And the TV, we're working for Steve and around the arenas and that.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve, of course, is the top babyface with Mark Lewin, the promoter. And and we were bought back as heels. And, you know, being overseas and getting a name for yourself, you think they bring us back as baby faces.
Yeah, yeah.
But they brought us back as heels. And we saw we weren't going nowhere with that, because they had the King Curtis and they had all the big heavies. You know, they had the Japanese, they had team, Fuji and Tanaka,
Oh, yeah.
the Jacks. They were hot. They were hot in Madison Square Garden. They were hot in New Zealand. They had the Von Brunners. They were hot in the States. They were hot in New Zealand. Tag teams. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had top stars.
Yeah.
So we were just on the card, and we started working around the country. And then all of a sudden, Mark and King were leaving to come back to the States. And they hot-shotted the territory, which was well known for Mark. You know what hot-shotting means, don't you?
No, I was going to ask you, what does that mean?
Hot-shotting is when you build up and have all angles peaking, and you blow them all off at once.
Okay.
Like normally you have one angle, storyline going, and you have one building up.
Yeah.
You blow one storyline off, and then you have the other one coming up.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Coming up to take its place. Well, they had them all level, and they blew them all off. The territory went flat. Because when you blow all the angles off at once, there's nothing to follow.
Yeah.
And Mark was known for that. Mark was known for that.
Yeah.
And that territory was selling out everywhere. Mm-hmm. He blew them all off, left the place dead, and they came back to the States.
So
and that's when Bob.
At this time, Luke, are you starting to change that gimmick, or are you still playing the role of the Kiwis?
We're still back in New Zealand. We're not the Kiwis. We're
right.
just Sweet William and Bob Miller, Brutal Bob Miller, the Brute.
Okay.
He's back to the Brute.
Okay.
Brutal Bob Miller.
Okay.
So we're working in New Zealand as Sweet William and yeah, I came up with the name, the Dream Team. That's right. For television, we're working wearing dark sunglasses and colorful jackets, and here we are now, the Dream Team.
Wow. So I'd like to see some photographs of that. I've never seen you as the Dream
Team. Well, remind me to send them to you.
All right, I will.
After this, remind me to send you photos of the Giant back in the heyday, and when we first come to Montreal, and the Dream Team.
Okay. Well,
we had the name Dream Team well before, 20 years before Vince had the name.
Okay.
You know, the Dream Team was 85.
Yeah, wasn't it?
With Greg Valentine and Brutus the Barber.
Yeah. Oh.
This was 60. This was 75. 10 years before.
Okay. All right.
The Dream Team.
Yeah. So you're back there now. I read something about your involvement with the NWA. So was this the
No, New Zealand was an NWA territory.
Got it. Okay.
New Zealand, I forget what it was called. Wrestling.
Okay. That's
what it was wrestling.
Okay.
You know, I told you, I'd never seen wrestling on television or nothing. I didn't see. It was after I started that I saw a wrestling magazine, and I think it was in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to Australia. I'd never seen wrestling on television until I was in Australia.
Okay.
When I was wrestling in New Zealand, I never saw wrestling on television.
Okay.
Oh, wrestling in New Zealand, yes. Come 1970, we had 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had the Wide World of Sport. It was a British program.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that. I think I may have even seen that when I used to be in the UK when
Yeah,
I.
Wild World of Sport, and it had Jackie Pello on, and it had English wrestling, the junior heavyweight. Oh no, the light heavyweights, light, 150 pounders,
Okay.
and ring and rounds. That's when I saw that. Anyhow, let's get back to anyhow. So we're there, and the business they went back. That's when Bob and me dropped out of the New Zealand scene.
Okay.
He bought a business like a 7-Eleven.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a nightclub with my business partner, and started doing Australia and Japan. That's all I was doing there.
How many years did that
This
last?
was this was 77 now.
Okay. So what inspired?
Into 78, we got it feet again. Bob sold the 7-Eleven. Mm-hmm. The nightclub, got rid of the nightclub. I actually had a sauna bar, massage parlor, and a nightclub.
Okay.
With my wrestling partner, not with Bob, with my partner, business partner in New Zealand,
okay.
Ray Johns, and sold those, and we got it to feet. We came back over here, and the first place we came to was Hawaii. Believe it or not, the guy that owned Hawaii was, his son was in the Patriots, wide receiver.
I'm not too familiar with the American football scene.
Yeah, anyhow. He owned the territory, and that's when New Zealand promoter Steve Rickard come up and bought it off him. Okay. Steve only did good in New Zealand because of King Curtis and Lewin, you know what I mean? When he started running, when we left, he brought all the French people in. Leo Burke was the booker, and Rick Martel stayed, and it was all French Canadians there, and in New Zealand. Right.
It's interesting though, Luke. You had a lot of, international wrestlers that were very popular in New Zealand. This is something I'd never really heard of that.
Yeah. Now, Frenchie Martin, who was a big star, and he was a manager of Dino Bravo in WWF, and that he was a wrestler, Frenchie Martin, and that he was a wrestler too in WWF, and that he was over there. Leo Burke was over there. The Brute was over there. The Brute from Canada. Leo Burke. The Burke family owned a promotion up in New Brunswick. Mm-hmm. Leo Burke's brother was there's 5 of them, 4 of them in the family, and they all worked. If you look up Leo Burke later, you'll see his brother's names and the territory they own up in New Brunswick.
Okay, Leo Burke.
Leo Burke, yeah. He was opposition to the other Frenchman who owned Grand Prix. Grand Prix was out of Montreal, but they had a substation up in New Brunswick, and they used the television from Montreal. Okay. We used to go up there for 2 weeks when we were working in Montreal and go up into New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, now trying to think of names. This is going back in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. anyhow, getting back to where we were.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, New Zealand were running with it, and I think too then the booker was Leo Burke, who was in New Zealand. In New Zealand, with the we left when the French Connection come, and we worked with them for a while, but the business wasn't like it was before.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you hot shot the place and take everything out, they tried to come back with more wrestling. Before it was heels with kick and punch. They got away with Jim Barnett changed it from rounds to time limits. He got actually the rounds changed to 20-minute rounds.
Got it.
Yeah. Or 12-minute rounds. 12-minute rounds at the start, so the matches could only go 11 or 10 minutes, and then he changed it 20 minutes so you get longer matches.
Yeah.
And they got rid of the rounds, and they got rid of the 4 ropes and got 3 ropes.
Okay. Now this time
they got wrestling. They got wrestling rings built with a spring in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had a car spring in the middle, so they had give.
At this time, Luke, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask: were there anybody from the WWF at that time? Were you guys getting scouted? Were you getting contacted by them at any time? Because you guys were moving around quite a bit.
No, we were down in New Zealand. Like we were not known in the States. We were not even known.
Okay.
And anyhow, we come up to Australia we come up to Hawaii, and Hawaii and that, and the name came and went. Ed, anyhow, worked for them, and then Steve bought it, a New Zealand promoter bought from it, and that, and had he had the Canadian connection there, and we were keeping our heads above water.
Yeah.
We're working 5 islands a week, flying over Diamond Head every night. Jack Lord, Hawaii 5-0 was getting done at the time. We'd look down and see them all getting acting, doing the movie, and that, and we'd leave the island at 5:30 every night, Waikiki, and we'd be back there at 10 o'clock.
Oh.
That's how easy that territory was. We would go to the gym at 8 in the morning. We'd be on the beach at 10, and on the beach till 4 o'clock. Go to the hotel. We lived in a hotel across the road from the beach.
Yeah.
Across the road from the pier on Waikiki Beach.
Yeah.
It was called the Waikiki Circle, and then we lived that life. All we did was keep our head above water.
Yeah.
Didn't make any business. So a big show in Pearl Harbor, Roddy Piper was flowing in, Buddy Rose was flowing in, a lot of names off the West Coast were flowing into Hawaii to work the show. Roddy Piper saw us work, called the promoter up in Oregon, Don Owens, and told him about us. Roddy said to us, "What do you guys do? Would you guys like to come and work in the States?" And we said, we've got a work permit. And he looked at us and he said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "You're in the fucking States. You're in the States now, Hawaii."
Yeah.
That's how good dumb we were.
Oh, man.
And then he said, "Okay." He said, "I'm going to call the promoter now." He called him, and he said, "He wants you to come and talk to him." He said, "He wants you to call him back. I'll come with you." He called him back. We talked to him, and we got a starting date for Northwest Championship Wrestling,
Okay.
which was run from the top of California to Vancouver, Canada.
All right. Okay.
So we went. We finished up. We didn't finish up. We had a booking in Japan from Hawaii. We went to the Japan booking, and then they asked us to stay 2 more weeks to work Korea. And we didn't tell Steve Rickard now owns Hawaii.
Okay.
And we worked for 2 weeks, and Steve Rickard was mad. did, you know, we informed him we're staying over 2 weeks. He was mad. And he said, you guys and that, blah, blah, blah. And then the plane ticket was back to Hawaii. He was so mad with us. He started beating us. I think we lasted a week. Yeah. And we told him to stick it. And we flew to the West Coast. Flew into Vancouver, and then flew from Vancouver to Calgary. No, where do we fly? Yeah, we spread over to Portland.
Okay, Portland.
Maybe to San Francisco and then to Portland.
Mm-hmm. Now
and that's the start of that. And that's where we started the invasion of Canada. Now with Sweet William and the Brute.
Okay.
Yeah, Sweet William and that. So we arrived in Canada. And Dutch Savage was sort of runs. He worked in the office for Don Owens, but he actually Don run his towns. Eldon Owens was his brother and run the southern towns from Portland down to California. All the northern towns were run by Don Owens up to Vancouver, like Seattle, Tacoma, and Vancouver. Mm-hmm. Don Owens had part of Vancouver with Gene Kaninsky.
Oh, okay, Gene Kaninsky, yeah.
You heard of him?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
He was a nut too. I'll tell you about that later. Anyhow, so we came in. They'd given us the name. Now coming from New Zealand, which is known for 100 million sheep and 3 million people. Now we were the sheep herders.
Okay.
And they had the Brute. The Brute had worked already there, so his name went to Butch Miller.
Okay, Butch Miller.
You know, instead of the Brute Miller.
Yeah.
He went to Butch Miller. And I was changed to Luke Williams.
Okay.
Because a lot of sheep dogs were called Luke.
Oh, got it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Victoire. We hope that you enjoyed Bushwacker Luke Williams Part 1. We will be back with Part 2 very, very soon. Until next time, please subscribe to the channel, like and share our videos. It helps us share these inspirational stories with a greater number of individuals worldwide. Victor what you must victor in your life. Victoire.